Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And as we enter the final day of Major 1 qualifiers, the potential scenarios here are absolutely out of control. Some pro players not happy at all already with the way the tiebreakers are being done, but Crimsix with a few words on the potential of Neptune returning to the subliners starting team. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. As with the YouTube algorithm, thank you very much indeed for doing that. You guys seem to like it when I say that one. Let's just dive straight on in. Firstly, this from Bance. This, well, as Octane says, yeah, we lost, because this is that kind of spot I showed you guys maybe a week or so ago, that there's a statue here on Berlin you can get on top of. Not really sure this is viable in anything other than search and destroy. Bance manages to make it happen, so maybe something we'll see coming more often in the professional side as time progresses. I think in search this could actually be kind of viable. It's a bit of a strange spot, not sure it's going to work in hardpoints, but yeah, Bance managed to make this jump happen, so clearly the Los Angeles Thieves guys weren't feeling particularly confident about their chances in the series. We'll discuss that one here in just a second. First, he thought this was actually kind of cool, right, because ranked players, well, it's in the game right now. People definitely have mixed reviews on how exactly it's faring, but I think generally a positive perception. Thought this is also kind of cool from Trek, right, talking about the fact that Paulex was the #1 player ranked in the entire world right now. I'm sure these things are changing very quickly indeed, but good to see the interest really from Trek in keeping up with the feedback and the competitive scene more generally on this front, and maybe I'll hop on and actually play some in the next couple of days. Haven't played more than 10 minutes of Vanguard since the entire thing came out, so maybe this is finally time to get back into it. But well, let's talk about the final series of yesterday, Los Angeles Thieves versus Toronto Ultra. Very interesting series and surprising one of that, especially after this game one. It's very rare on Bacage a team gets blown out of the water, and I honestly thought for a time these were going to get point clubbed like Toronto by Toronto, like they did last year. You guys might remember the 250-14 that it was on Radar Point last year, right? Toronto versus Los Angeles Thieves. It felt like a similar thing was going to happen here, and in the end, Los Angeles Thieves just got over 100 points, but it really felt like, okay, Toronto come with a vengeance today, like they're coming for blood, right, after the kind of controversial series they had against Optic on Friday, but yeah, the rest of the series does not go their way. Really impressed, honestly, about Los Angeles Thieves, the way they played these Tuscans, the search and destroy, especially, like, some great moments right here, like Octane had a nice little 1v1 clutch against Cammy in some crucial rounds, and yeah, honestly, really impressed, because Ultra are very difficult to beat in all the game modes, they're very good at all the modes, but I mean, Octane and the guys on the Thieves in general really just turned up in these search and destroys and the control, and got the better of Ultra in a 3-1 fashion. Very rare to see Ultra lose 2 days in a row, 3-0, 3-1, and it just creates even better storylines, right, for the Major there. Okay, the #1 team in the game that a lot of people said winners of the Kickoff Classic, that X has been talking about to be the 2022 World Champions already, and now finding themselves in a spot where they've won 1 map out of their last 7, and I mean, it just creates phenomenal potential going into the Major. And also the way these seedings are going to work out are just absolutely ridiculous. Like, yeah, being a #2 seed might not be great when the 6th or 7th seeds you might be playing against could be a very solid team, but honestly, every team's solid at this point, and there's so many possibilities that we'll dive onto here in a second. The control also goes the way of Thieves, and when it was 2-1 to Thieves, I was like, okay, wow, I honestly thought this series was going to go game 5, Ultra might just sneak it out, but I mean, Thieves actually win this in 4, because on a Tuscan hardpoint, these guys are very difficult indeed to stop. Like, Bance actually had a phenomenal control right here, but Thieves, just their team play was just pretty good. I think honestly some misplays from Ultra really in the search and destroy, and also in this final game as well. The round 11s, the round 5s didn't go their way this time, which usually it does, right? Their clutch factor's usually out of control. Very impressive from Thieves, especially because these guys are obviously playing out of LA right now, right? We thought that might be somewhat of a disadvantage in this online era, but still, they're going to go into the Major with a very solid, a very healthy seed indeed, with a 4-1 record, which is, well, very solid as we'll see compared to these other teams here in a second. These then are the standings going into the final day. Now, of course, what this really comes down to is map counts, where we see FaZe 4-0, Thieves 4-1, Ravens 3-1, Surge 3-1. So these 4 teams, of course, we already knew they were going to be confirmed as winners. There are a couple of other teams now that I believe are now confirmed winners, but it's very difficult to say. Subliners, Legion are out of there for sure, and I believe that maybe Rokkr are out of there as well, but there's definitely been mixed opinions on this, because no one is exactly sure how these tiebreakers work. We'll dive into that in a second. Firstly, I just wanted to talk about this from the interview that came up from Crimsix, an incredibly entertaining affair. I couldn't get it for you guys last night, couldn't rip it from the stream in time to put it in yesterday's video, and it was a long one anyway. But I'll throw a couple of things in here real quick, especially what he has to say on the Neptune situation. The Dynamics kind of says, look, you're going to drop anyone for Neptune again. Is Neptune coming back? I think we saw actually in the end of the No Pressure documentary kind of recently that they were kind of hinting at the end that yes, Neptune's going to go to Challengers. When he kind of improves and becomes the player they want him to be, then he can step back into the team. But until then, maybe that's not going to happen. Crimsix said it's a possibility, and he also has a few other words to say for maybe some of his opposition coming up later today.
We're going to win hard points versus, you know, the, how do I say this, Lord of the Rings Bilbo Baggins and Frodo. For those of you guys who don't know, that's Simp and aBeZy, all right? My centering is going to be a little bit lower tomorrow, you know? Just a little bit lower to make up for...
is Neptune potentially ever going to re-enter this roster?
Ooh.
Hey, yo.
Hard-hitting questions.
Like you said, bro, it potentially.
Okay.
Potentially.
All that to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right,
by the way, nice shirt. Where'd you get that at, man?
Yo, this is fire, right? This is Zara right here. You like this nice shirt as well?
No,
So I don't know what you guys think about the potential of Neptune coming back, because it feels to me that just the way that Crimsix and Clayster maybe feel about Neptune right now, and the fact that they're maybe trying to force him into just playing the heal role, whereas in reality it seems like they need an aggressive partner to Hydra. That would be the ideal, because Hydra can slay and it can drop a 1.2, but he needs someone at his pace, you would think, to let this team reach its potential. I'm not sure Royalty's that guy. Neptune, in theory, could have been that guy, but it seems like they wanted him to play the kind of hill role, which meant that he couldn't really play to his potential. Maybe when he either learns to play a different way, or like whatever Crim and Clay exactly want to do, then maybe he can return. I just don't see this as an incredibly likely opportunity, but still, it might happen down the line. My theory is that New York eventually will try out another player instead of Royalty, and if that doesn't work, maybe Neptune comes back then. I don't really know what they're thinking. But look, it's still a possibility. They've not ruled it out, of course, but New York, of course, find themselves in a pretty tough spot still right now. They won yesterday against Boston. That also puts Boston in a very difficult spot as well, because as we'll see in a second, it's still possible, I believe, for Boston not to make it into the winners bracket if they get demolished by Optic later on today. This also from Crimsix. How do teams know what hardpoint to veto against us when our win rate is the same at all of them at 0%? So congratulations to Crim, definitely making things difficult here for FaZe later today in terms of what they veto. But FaZe obviously have a very good shot now of being 5-0, going in as that number 1 seed into the major. But the 8th place team that they would play in that situation is not necessarily going to be so easy, as we'll see with these tiebreakers in a second. As Clay says, all the tiebreaker nonsense coming into play, and it's only stage 1. Like, the tiebreakers here are just ridiculous. Like, I don't think anyone actually 100% knows and is 100% sure what happens if certain things happen today. We'll go through what I believe should be the case, but still, I'm not honestly guaranteeing this by any means. And also, Rambo even says as a reply, like, you know, same thing happened last year, but last year, in fairness, they had the groups, and therefore, because they were 2 teams or 2 groups of 6, like, the tiebreakers were never as insane. There was maybe like a 3-way tiebreaker sometimes, but today we're going to get a 5-way tiebreaker. If not potentially a 6-way tiebreaker is possible today, which is just completely ridiculous. Now, personally, I think what they're doing this year with the fact that, okay, there's no groups and there's all the teams can get to play each other, like, I think that's more interesting and more entertaining from the perspective of, like, which teams actually play each other in the standings and all that type of stuff. Like, I think groups makes things a little bit more boring. At the same time, though, it does mean the tiebreakers are pretty ridiculous, and, like, no one really knows what's going on. As Ryan points out to me, and I actually saw this on the website a couple of days ago, these are technically the tiebreakers on the CDL website. It starts off with a head-to-head match win percentage. So if 2 teams are tied, you'd think they'd do head-to-head. And if there's more than 2 teams tied, you'd think they'd kind of skip head-to-head and go down to overall match and then game win percentage. And then if those are tied, it goes to strength of schedule based on the opposition and where they placed and how they performed. And then if all of that's tied, it actually goes to a tiebreaker game to decide, which is very unlikely to go to. But what I'm not sure about is if there's still more than 2 teams tied, do they still somehow consider head-to-head stuff, even though a lot of these teams won't actually have played against each other? It creates a lot of complications, because as Saint says from the Rokkr side, just wants to know if we have a chance at winners or not, and Joey Nubsy's trying to calculate these, and what Slasher says, like, he's not sure. Mack tried to give it a go, and he reckoned that Paris, New York, LAG, and Florida are all chalked for winners, but I've seen some other explanations saying that's actually not the case at all. Now, I mean, Slasher's saying, you know, of course the tiebreakers make 0 sense, figured it'd be some BS, cheers about that one. I'm generally confused, so we have one of the better map win-loss in a 5-way tie, but they're going to somehow use head-to-head to break a 5-way tie where not everyone has played each other. So I'm not exactly sure what they're planning to do here. It would make sense to me that if there's a massive tie, you just use the map count, the map win percentage between all the teams, and use it that way, which seems to be what they're doing right now with the standings. So if you look at the standings right here, there's currently a 4-way tie at 2 and 3, and one of Optic and Boston will lose today, and therefore there'll be another team at 2 and 3, and it's possible that New York could beat FaZe, even unlikely, and they would be 2 and 3 as well. But at minimum, there's going to be a 5-way tie at 2 and 3 here, and I mean, yeah, what this means is pretty insane. What you would imagine it means is that you simply go by the map count and that you just work it out from there. So, like, right now, of course, Minnesota Rokkr are 10th because they've got a 9 in 13 map count, which is pretty poor in comparison to Ultra, who are 9 in 9, but still 2 and 3. So they have a 50% map win. Rokkr, of course, have a worse map win percentage than that, and then it goes Guerrillas just behind Toronto in terms of percentage, Mutineers right behind them, and then Rokkr. So if this is how they do it, I think that makes sense. I think that's how I would imagine it to be. And this is the analysis that Jimmy did and put this on the Reddit. I thought was absolutely fantastic based on the situation. So thanks to Jimmy for doing this. Like, I can't guarantee 100% this all stuff is accurate, but just from what I looked at, I believe this is the case. For example, if we look at Boston, there's a load of potential here. They can come anywhere today from 4th all the way to 9th. Now, if Texas beat them 3-0, if they get 3-0 tonight by Optic, then they come 9th, and there's nothing they can do about it. They need to win a map, and I believe that's because, if we look at the standings here, Boston are currently 9-9. If they get 3-0 tonight, they'll be 9-12. That means their map win percentage will actually be worse than Florida's, because 9-12 is worse than 8-10, and therefore they'll be behind Florida. Florida will get bumped up into the 8th spot, as will the rest of the teams. But Boston only need to win one map, and then they'll be 10-12 at the very least, and then that's actually better than Mutineers 8-10. So I believe that's the situation. So Boston have to avoid getting 3-0'd. If they can do that, they get 8th, and the other teams are confirmed. I don't believe Rokkr has a chance. If the seeding goes as we've kind of explained it, I don't believe Rokkr has a chance to make it, because their map win percentage is just too bad. So it doesn't matter what happens. If New York win, then they get 11th. If they lose, they get 10th. But I think the Rokkr are probably chalked here. Mutineers have a chance if Boston get 3-0's. They need Optic to 3-0 Boston, then Boston will be 9th, Mutineers will bump up. But this seems to imply that Toronto should be set, as we might expect them to be with their good map counts. So are Los Angeles Guerrillas, but they'll be 7th or 8th. So I believe that's the case. I think this makes sense based on kind of how I look at things, but they may do the tiebreakers difference. Clayster says they're kind of nonsense. Like, Slash is kind of saying he doesn't reckon they're going to make any sense either. So we shall see. But this is what I imagine is going to be the case. Optic, of course, are also guaranteed now. They either get the 4th, 5th, or 6th, depending on what happens. So still an awful lot to play for, right? Because FaZe, let's say they're going to be number 1. But still, if Optic end up 6th, they're going to play the 3rd team, which obviously could be a pretty big deal. If they play 4th, they play up against the 5th seed. So there's so much potential here really for what happens. Like, Boston have some crazy tiebreakers. Also at the top of the pecking order as well here between Ravens and Surge. Because Ravens and Surge could both technically place first today if they win their game and Atlanta FaZe get beaten, which is of course both unlikely, but still there's a very decent chance whoever wins in this series between Ravens and Surge gets a great seed up into the 2nd or 3rd slots. And even if the qualification scenarios down low are kind of relatively well determined, unless Boston get 3-0'd, in which case that the teams that actually do make it to the winners bracket for the major can be switched around, there's still so many implications as to the actual seeding stuff, right? Because of course, which teams these guys play is going to depend on the results today. It's absolute craziness. This is the thing, the way the CDL decided to do the format this season, they've got to try and do a good job explaining this. But well, it's going to be difficult to, I guess, make those storylines well known. These then are the games for today. So Ravens versus Surge, as discussed, that's game 1. Very exciting one actually, because these two teams of course matched up at the Kickoff Classic and Surge absolutely bodied them. But now Ravens are coming in a pretty interesting spot where Surge got defeated yesterday 3-0 by the Mutineers. Ravens are now looking a bit better than they did at the kickoff, and both these teams are still fighting for the potential of a number 1 seed. Like, if New York beat FaZe somehow, like one of these teams could potentially get the number 1 spot, which is pretty absurd. Then game 2 is Breach versus Optic. If Optic play anything like they did against Toronto, they should come in here and handle business no problem at all. The question is for Breach, can they win a map? All they need to do is win one map here, and they get themselves into winners, I believe. If they get 3-0, they're out of there. So I think that they'll somehow sneak a search and destroy or a control or something, and they'll make it happen. But I don't know. Optic might just come up with the fire again today. And then the final series, FaZe versus Subliners. I don't really think this is going to be any issue for FaZe. I think they're going to bowl over New York 3-1 or something. But still, we'll see if that improvement we saw to some degree with New York against the Breach can continue on here. But so many things honestly to dive into today. Like, tonight's going to be crazy. I hope the CDL and the kind of League Ops guys do a good job explaining this to all of us, because well, it's far from clear all the situations. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on a like button. Tell us the YouTube gods it's a good video. I just like you should see it as well. And help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always. Take care. And I will see you next time.